Welcome to Talking Early Years, a showcase training podcast with Ellen Roberts
and Gemma Carr. Hello and welcome to today's Talking Early Years podcast. So in this episode, we are going to be discussing child safeguarding practice reviews and how these impact us on a daily basis as practitioners. So let's dive in. Ellen, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Gemma. How are you?
Yes, good, thank you. All good. So, Ellen, talk to me. What legislation is there around child safeguarding practice reviews? What are they? What does this mean?
So, child safeguarding practice reviews were formerly known as serious case reviews, and these first came in under Section 16 of the Children's Act of 2004, so the updated one after Victoria Climbié, to learn from cases of child abuse and neglect and learn how we should better be working together to safeguard children. Talking of which, in 2018's version of Working Together to Safeguard Children, our serious case reviews changed their name to become child safeguarding practice reviews. We were talking, weren't we, Gemma, actually last week? I actually thought that came in the 2023 Working Together to Safeguard Children. I don't remember it being that long ago.
Yeah, I remember them obviously as as safeguarding practice reviews. And yes, I felt like it was only yesterday that they changed, but it was a while ago now.
That is why CPD is so important.
Absolutely.
So as we say, so under 2004 in the Children's Act they first came in, and then it was also amended in the Children and Social Work Act in 2017, which says where a local authority in England knows or suspects that a child has been abused or neglected, the local authority must notify the Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel if the child dies or is seriously harmed in the local authority's area, or is harmed or dies whilst normally resident in the local authority's area, or the child dies or is seriously harmed outside of England. So essentially, if a child dies or is very seriously harmed, a child safeguarding practice review is required. You've got two different levels. So you have national child safeguarding practice reviews, which are commissioned by the Child Safeguarding Practice Review Panel. These ones are the most significant, most important cases and are of national interest. So cases like Star Hobson, Victoria Climbié, Arthur Lavinia Hughes, ones that we all know about. You also have local child safeguarding practice reviews, which are conducted only, as we say, by local safeguarding partners, so your local authority, police, those kind of things. So what else do we know about child safeguarding practice reviews, Gemma?
So importantly, often what comes from these safeguarding practice reviews is legislation changes. So there is normally a big shift in legislation because of these cases, predominantly with the national ones.
Yeah.
There will be that shift. So thinking about a couple of historical examples that may have heard of, but give a clear explanation as to why we have certain things in setting or why there is a certain legislation now. So this is one example which can be seen every day within settings, within education and specifically early years, is the Vanessa George case. Vanessa George was taking explicit photos of children whilst in her nursery days, so during nappy changes, and was taking the children to the side and taking explicit photos and then was giving them to her paedophile boyfriend, and those were being sold onto a paedophile ring. That could only have been done because of mobile phones. Therefore, the reason why all nurseries have a mobile phone policy and no one is allowed their mobile phones around the children or in setting. Parents can't even answer a phone call if they're in setting. They're asked to step outside because of the Vanessa George case. So that's one of the big ones. Also the Ian Huntley case. Do you remember the Ian Huntley case?
Yeah, Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman.
Yeah, absolutely. That one was all about that is now so they brought in the CRB checks, which are now known as your DBS checks. And looking at safer recruitment, making sure that people who are employed by the school or nursery or working with children have had those prior prior checks, prior criminal record checks, to make sure that they are safe to be working with the children. And again, the reason why until you've got your DBS check, you shouldn't be changing nappies, you shouldn't be left alone with children.
Absolutely.
In your care. So one of the big ones was the Baby P case.
Yes.
That was a very, very big historical case. And because of Baby P, we now have the Every Child Matters legislation.
Wow.
And safeguarding boards were created, and there was that emphasis on working collectively as a group. So think about your multi-agency safeguarding hubs, all those elements are because of Baby P and everybody communicating with one another regarding safeguarding cases.
Wow. Incredibly important. This is where we were saying, and we touched upon it in our last episode of the Safeguarding Show, actually, when we were talking about legislation and why it changes and why it's updated. And we keep saying that the practitioners that are training and coming through now are the ones that will be changing these pieces of legislation. And quite a few of these are not that long ago either.
No.
So it's not that they've made the legislation 20 years ago, it's updated with technology or whatever but it's still pretty much fit for purpose. Not at all. There are constant changes and constant emerging threats that require that landscape to be agile, really, in protecting children. So it's, again, we keep saying about CPD and keeping on top of staying up to date with legislation and practice. Child safeguarding practice reviews are incredibly important and a really key way to do just that, and to read them and find out what's going on in the world of early years and what do we need to safeguard against. How do people find out about them?
So they are actually all accessible on the NSPCC website. So any of the large cases or the case reviews, updates are kind of on that NSPCC website and can be viewed. One thing I will say, I will put the caveat with that: be easy on yourself. They're not pleasant reads. They are home hitting. They with the NSPCC, obviously they're all relating to the children. That relates into what we do on our daily basis. So just be careful with yourself when you are reading these. Take it easy. Okay.
Definitely. So something that we subscribe to at Showcase is the Casper newsletter from the NSPCC. So I've also seen them come through on that, but I've also seen that you can subscribe to receive case review updates directly from the NSPCC as well. So even if they aren't your local authority, it's worth having a read. As Gemma says, protect yourself a little bit when you're reading them. Some of them are quite difficult to read. Some of them range from potential parental mental health neglect and what we would class as lighter ones. So there's just opportunities to work better together to protect a child, which that's absolutely great. Some of them are much heavier, and unfortunately, deaths of children or abuse of children, that is much harder to read. Something locally to us as well, just to point people towards, the Hampshire Safeguarding Children Partnership often run webinars. These are free to attend, and they look at learnings from serious case reviews, child safeguarding practice reviews, or local child safeguarding practice reviews, whatever you want to call them. Those practice reviews are looked at. So in Hampshire, we actually have quite a low rate of practice reviews, which is obviously a good thing, but they run webinars looking at what the local threat is, and then if there hasn't been anything local, they will then look nationally to look at learnings. So the next one is in January, and as I say, it's free to attend, but they're really useful webinars. So it's a get together of all sorts of different organisations, whether it's police, the health service, education, like us. You can get together and discuss the cases, which is a really useful opportunity.
Amazing. That's really interesting. So thinking about the safeguarding practice reviews, is there anything maybe that's a common theme, something that often comes up? What is sort of seen throughout them?
You know what? In most child safeguarding practice reviews, poor partnership working is usually the core of every single practice review. And that is where it's so important for people to remember that it is part of a wider network to protect a child. Often there's poor communication or little or no information sharing between services, and that can be exacerbated if it's going over county lines. So, for example, Hampshire Police might work completely different to Devonshire Healthcare, for example. So that can be very difficult, and that's where things like county lines actually do look to exploit those communication barriers between authorities to then exploit a child. It makes it easier. Some other common themes include things like failure to listen to the child's voice and actually listen to what the child is telling you. And occasionally that is because practitioners or whoever's listening to the child isn't quite sure what they're listening out for. So we talk about it in Showcase quite a bit about evolving language and what things we need to be listening out for, first of all, from children, but also what we need to be teaching them. So we say that not to teach children to refer to their private parts as flowers or cookies or all these different words, because you might miss a key piece of information because they're not saying what you would recognize as an issue. Sometimes there's a lack of professional curiosity as well, of just, oh, I'll leave that for somebody else, or just not listening properly again, or lack of asking that follow-up question. Oh, what do you mean by that? Or let me just clarify what that means to you, and actually asking those questions. There's also, resulting from that, often an inadequate assessment of risk. So people might not think that it's a concern or something that needs to be raised. So again, looking at poor communication, you might not communicate everything that a child has disclosed to you because you're sort of risk assessing what you think are the most priority elements to say, rather than sharing everything and that picture being built. Sometimes there's one agency that is kind of over relied on to sort something. So whether it's healthcare or social services, sometimes practitioners and people working with early years children can be guilty of saying, oh, the GP will have probably picked that up, or oh, the police will be dealing with that. You cannot assume that that's the case. You must report it. If two people report it and it's not needed, absolutely fine, great, it's in hand. But this is where we have missed opportunities to intervene early. So we've got to keep working together. So how can you utilise that information in your setting, Gemma?
So first of all, making sure that you are aware of your safeguarding policy within your setting. You almost know that. You should know it off by heart, if not word for word. Who to go to, where to gain information from if your DSL isn't available, who then to go to, what you would do if something such and such happened. Also, being aware of what's happening locally and what to look out for. So kind of seeing what's happening in your local news, seeing what's around in your papers, what's happening, what might be flagged a little bit, having those conversations with each other. Oh, did you hear that on the radio this morning? Or what was that about? Have you heard this has happened? And being confident in your whistleblowing policy. Again, so much of this also comes down to people working in nurseries as well. So that whistleblowing policy, if you have got a concern, or if you just go, why is that child always upset when such and such picks them up, or does that's not okay. You need to be reporting that and again, following that whistleblowing policy.
Definitely.
As well as keeping up to date with any changes of legislation, and when they happen, following the reviews. So following those safeguarding practice reviews as well, to see how they develop, how they change, and what the outcome is if it changes legislation.
Absolutely, hugely important, and that's where the NSPCC and their CSPR updates are really important to follow as well. Quite often they'll have recorded webinars on their website that you can log into at any time as well. If you can't attend live webinars, it's not a barrier to your CPD, but keeping on top of that legislation is so important. For example, going through the House of Lords at the minute, it's had the sign off from House of Commons, it's now going through the Lords and then ready for royal assent, is the mandatory reporting changes.
Okay.
So for child sexual abuse, it's part of the Crime and Policing Bill from February of this year. It's due to become law in 2026 for implementation by 2027. And it's all about the reporting of child sexual abuse. So it will become mandatory for whoever receives disclosures or witnesses sexual abuse to report it. It's not just your DSL. So you can report it to your DSL, but you also then have to make sure your DSL has followed it up as well. So this stops safeguarding disclosures stopping at one agency or one person and relying on that working how it should. It's an extra step in the process in legislation to make sure that that is reported. So again, if it's reported 3 times, doesn't matter.
No.
As long as it's reported.
Yeah,
that's the main
absolutely.
thing. So again, keeping on top of changes is really important. It is a massive reminder every single time we read child safeguarding practice reviews that we must keep partnership working and safeguarding at the very forefront of our minds. Partnership working doesn't just mean working with your colleagues or with parents, it's with everybody in your local area. So your CPD is more than just your annual refresher. It is reading these reviews, making sure you're up to date with legislation and learning yourself as a key reminder of how you can work in partnership better with others as well. It's also a key reminder in setting that contextual safeguarding is all about understanding your changing environment and the children's changing environment, both in and outside of the home. It expands your view of what risk is to make sure you are as vigilant and proactive within your community as you possibly can be. So again, understanding that local landscape and national landscape helps you to put context to safeguarding and understand what you're listening out for and what you're protecting children against.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in today. As always, safeguarding is a big topic, and if you have any concerns, you can reach out to your settings DSL or to the Showcase Training Safeguarding Lead, or direct to your local MASH or LADO.
So don't forget to like, share and follow this podcast to stay updated. And as always, let's keep the conversation going about early years. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference.